Alrighty, it's 2 o'clock, so we'll get started. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rebecca Connor. I'm one of the senior managers here at BDO Central, and I'll be your moderator today. BDO Central encompasses both our Manawatu and our Hawke's Bay offices, and we have some of the partners from both offices on the call today. They'll be available for Q&A at the end of this webinar. We are using the GoTo platform today for the webinar. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the webinar environment, this is the GoTo panel. Just jump to that slide now. So you'll see an orange arrow, so that is how you open and close your control panel. There's also an audio pane to control your audio features in GoTo. You can ask a question at any time in the questions pane. If you just type that in, and we'll answer your questions at the end of the webinar. Now, I'd like to introduce today's presenter, Ross Hadwin. Welcome, Ross. Ross is the Managing Partner for BDO Central, based in our Manawatu office here in Palmerston North. He's been part of the BDO team for over 30 years, specialising in advisory, tax and agribusiness. Ross has held a number of positions within the local community and is currently a trustee of the Arahanui Hospice. He also sits on the BDO National Board as the representative for us here at BDO Central. You'll usually find Ross at Little Savannah on a Friday afternoon at 4 p.m. enjoying their latest offerings. For those on the webinar from Hawke's Bay and other regions around New Zealand, Little Savannah is a bar and restaurant just around the corner from our BDO office in Palmerston North. Over to you, Ross.
Thanks very much, Rebecca. And just by way of explanation, the reason I'm at Little Savannah every Friday at 4 o'clock is that I'm conducting market research. It's always important to know what's going on in your market, in your community, and to stay connected. So I'll talk a little bit about staying connected later on in the presentation, but that's the reason. I may also be supporting the local wine industry, but that's merely incidental. I'd just like to thank you all for coming on our webinar today. I hope that you will get something useful out of this. The last 9 weeks or so has been quite unprecedented, and if you're feeling uncertain about the future, you need to know that you're not alone in that. It is quite a common thing for people to be feeling right now about their businesses. We believe that a great deal of this can be overcome by some really good planning, so you know where you're going. And right now, that's probably more short-term planning than long-term planning. And to give you an example of that, I just talk about our own business, BDO, and I'm talking here specifically about BDO nationally, the national organisation of BDO, which is about 90 partners and 850 odd staff across 14 or 15 locations in New Zealand. So prior to lockdown, we had started a process of resetting our strategy. So we were doing some strategy planning, and it was a 5-year new strategy reset. We've parked that right now because while it's still appropriate, and we will come back to it for sure, the most important thing now is to get through to the end of this year. So a short-term strategy. So the board of BDO have now set, put some strategic goals in place for that 7 or 8 month period through to the end of the year, and then we'll reassess where we are, because we really don't know where we're going to be in terms of the economy, the global economy, the local economy, the New Zealand economy. We really don't know where we are going to be. So it probably makes sense to review that after a certain period of time. So there we go. This African proverb is probably relevant today. Smooth seas don't make skillful sailors. and we have certainly not had some smooth seas in the last few weeks. And of course, most economists you listen to will tell you that we're in for a pretty rough ride. But if you can ride that out, and we would say ride that out with a good, valid plan, then you should come out the other side okay. And of course, once the seas do smooth out again, then you're in a good position with your business. Okay, we're just going to this is the agenda for today, so I'll just run briefly through this. These are some of the topics that we'll cover. So we will talk a little bit about budgets, both personal and business. We'll talk about opportunities, vulnerabilities, and the critical challenges that you're probably facing in your business right now. It's probably reasonably easy to identify risks, but to manage those risks is a far greater ask. So we'll talk a bit about that. We'll talk about goals and actions, and really what it is that what you can do next. But before we get stuck into things, I'll just throw in the usual disclaimer that we're pretty good at, and as accountants, we're pretty good at disclaimers. Just need to say here that today we are not insolvency specialists. So the people, myself presenting this webinar, and other people that you might be speaking to at BDO, we are not in ourselves insolvency specialists, although we do have access to those insolvency specialists. So there are now some quite strict rules and regulations around solvency. Some of those have been amended under the COVID situation. But if your business is unable to continue to trade as a result of solvency or bank finance issues, we would refer you to one of those specialists. So that's our disclaimer. Before I get started, I just want to share some thoughts about how we can stay better connected at this time. And I'm not talking about technology with things like webinars, although this is new to us. This is our first webinar that we've run at BDO Central, and I'm pretty sure it won't be the last. And certainly our team have had numerous online meetings over the past 8 or 9 weeks. And that is sort of a new norm. But the staying connected I'm talking about is from the perspective of how we can work together now and in the future, so where your expertise can be combined with our expertise, so that we can create some outcomes that probably wouldn't be possible if you were working alone. So we think it's really important that you connect with people like your banker, your legal, perhaps your HR advisor, and of course your accountant, so that together you come up with a really good plan for your business. At BDO, our why is people helping people achieve their dreams. And that's why we're running this webinar today. So look upon this as a means of us being able to work even better together. So I encourage you to take notes as we go through, and don't be shy about asking questions. As Beck said at the start, there is a method under the GoToWebinar of typing in the question, and that will go to Beck, and we'll cover off those at the end of the presentation. Right, the need to innovate. So during times of adversity, we're often forced to think outside the square, to reinvent the way we work or the way we behave. And we see 4 main opportunities for you to reinvent your business. So the first opportunity is to innovate. And the Oxford Dictionary describes innovation as the introduction of new things, ideas, or ways of doing something. And a great example is here on the screen, this business that during the COVID-19 pandemic, it changed from selling travel pillows, not a lot of market for those when no airlines are flying, to hair clippers, quite a large market for hair clippers as it turned out in the lockdown. So this, in this sense, innovation is just doing something completely different. So that might be introducing a new product line or a new service. The second way to reinvent is to re-engineer. And the Cambridge Dictionary describes re-engineer as to change and improve the design of a product or system. In other words, use what you've already got to produce something completely different. In the COVID environment, there are lots of examples of this. For example, the New Zealand Beer Company, who took a look at what plant they had, and they moved from producing beer to creating their own hand sanitizer. I make the distinction that that's not the same as the US residents asking if it was safe to drink disinfectant to cure coronavirus. Another example, and I said there are numerous, is of the Formula One teams who took up the challenge to make ventilators rather than Formula One engines. A local example that I can think of is Dannevirke company Metal Form, which makes high-tech electronic products normally. And quite early on in the lockdown, they set themselves up to make the plastic face shields that form part of the PPE gear that all our frontline workers were needing. And so they set up their business to be able to do that, and they're exporting that product. The third way to reinvent your business is to adapt or change the way you deliver your products or services. So if we take the new normal or the new environment that we find ourselves in, how do we change to suit that environment better? So a great example was a local beauty therapy business that emailed their client base offering a free online skin consultation if they bought some product. So as well as new bundles of product, they also were able to sell a solution into that person's home. So that looking at how they could change something that they couldn't do under lockdown into still creating some revenue for their business. So we've talked about innovation, re-engineering, adaptation, and the fourth way to reinvent is to widen your lane. And what we mean by widening your lane is to broaden your product or service offering. For example, the cafe who broadens their offering from purely cabinet food and coffee to include new ready-made meals, boxed sweet treats, and selling wholesale ingredients and even ingredient bundles for making their signature treats. I think we can probably all think of numerous examples in our local communities of, particularly in the hospitality trade, of businesses that have taken advantage of this and widened their lane and expanded into such things as home deliveries and even click and collect service. And I can think of one right here in Palmerston North next door to us, very good restaurant Nero, who not only did that, but now that they can actually serve people in their restaurant, they are continuing with their click and collect service. And they've made a bit of a speciality out of it by creating a special Sunday roast meal. So you can ring up on a Saturday, order your roast, go in sort of between 5 and 6 on a Sunday and pick it up. That service is continuing, even though they still can seat people in their restaurant, although in less numbers than before. So with the 4 ideas in mind, innovation, re-engineering, adaptation, and broadening your offering, think about what you might do in your business. And that is what business recovery planning is all about. There's a natural order in which to reinvent your business. And if we were doing business continuity planning, we'd ask you to put the oxygen mask on yourself first. Business recovery planning is no different. Remember that the business is there to serve you, not the other way around. You should not be a slave to your business. So step 1 is to put your shareholder or owner hat on and define what you need to get out of your business. Can you make savings in your personal spending to reduce the cash flow strain on the business? Certainly we've seen examples of people making savings during lockdown in terms of their spending. So you need to ask yourself, can those savings continue? Updating your personal budget is best done using a template so that you don't miss any expenses. And the easy way to do that is just to look at your bank statements, usually online, and see what you typically spend in a month. Try not to scare yourself. Of course, you need to be realistic when looking at this, because we have been in lockdown for the last few weeks. So you probably need to go back beyond that to see what your normal spending patterns were. Once you've done your personal budget, we would then look at the business budget. And some of you may have already done a business budget for the year, but this, of course, is likely to change quite significantly now. We would recommend what we would call a bottom-up process to doing your business budget. So you start at the bottom. So we'll start at the bottom of this list here on screen, and work out what the increase in cash is that you need to achieve for the year. It's quite important to start here, as we've seen that many businesses have found that they didn't have a sufficient war chest of cash prior to going into the lockdown. I'm not trying to be technical here, but I just want to show you how you can take control by going through a high-level step-by-step process. So we'll just go through this. So we start, as I said, start at the bottom. What is the increase in or decrease in cash that you expect or that you want for the year? You need to factor in other cash movements. So you may be able to free up some cash by reducing your debtors or your stock or your work in progress levels, or by perhaps negotiating better terms with your suppliers. You need to take into account loans, and you need to allow for principal repayments on loans. And some people may have negotiated with their bank principal loan holidays, but as with any holiday, that comes to an end. So you need to factor in when you might need to start repaying principal. Asset purchases and sales, for that matter, need to be factored in, certainly around sales. If you've got obsolete assets that you no longer need, free up that cash by getting rid of them. Drawings, so that's where we link back to the personal budget. So that's what you need from the personal side of things in order to live. And that comes up to net profit after tax. We work out the tax, of course, because while there may be some relief that's been provided by the government for people who are not able to pay their tax, ultimately you will still have to pay your tax. Have a look at your overheads to see where savings can be made. There's a lot of talk around, of course, at the moment about premises. So my advice around premises is don't rush into anything. Sit back, think about your business and where it might go, and undertake this plan. By undertaking this planning process, it'll give you some more clarity around that, and then make decisions. So don't rush into saying, well, we only need half the space because half our staff are going to work from home. In the long run, that might not work out. Then once you've looked at overheads, you'll end up with gross profit. So from there, you'll be able to work out the level of sales that you need, the gross revenue that you need for your business. So then it's all about reviewing these numbers and margins to make sure that you come up with a workable revised budget. Ideally, from there, you'll complete a more detailed forecast on a month-by-month basis. So this process here is setting out a sort of a summary of what the position might be, but then you want to be able to try and expand that out to a month-by-month basis so that you can track your progress as you go through the year. And this tracking your progress as you go through the year is where having real-time digital reports of your numbers is so important. For example, if you identified that your sales needed to be, say, 500,000, that equates to around about $10,500 per week if your business is open 48 weeks a year. You need to have a system for recording how you're going against that target. Likewise, if you've got debtor terms of 7 days and your debtors are currently taking 41 days to pay you on average, you want to measure that to see whether that's getting worse or if it's getting better, which is obviously where you want it to go. We strongly recommend you measure no more than 5 of your most important numbers. So this is what we call key performance indicators, or KPIs. So with that might be daily or weekly sales. It might be gross profit by product or service. It might be debtor days or increase or decrease in cash for the month. So it's a matter of working out what those 5 key elements are in your business and measuring them. So once you have those and your budget, it's important that you have those loaded into your monthly reporting system so that you can track them. So if you're using Xero, for example, it is possible to put your budget figures into Xero and then produce a report every month that monitors your progress against that budget. If you want to talk to us about technology, if your technology is not quite up to that, we do have some people who have expertise in that area, so please do talk to us. Once you know at a high level what your budget is, it's then time to look at the opportunities that exist to achieve that budget. And again, we recommend focusing on no more than 5 key opportunities. Think of the ideas we talked about earlier about when we talked about reinventing your business. Opportunities could also be things like working in more of an online way with either your team or your customers or both. You may no longer need the same premises, or you may need to redefine the roles in your business. Or there may be new lines of revenue to pursue, or even other businesses to acquire. So have an open mind when it comes to opportunities. Other opportunities could be around the adoption of technology or systems to improve your efficiency or your online communication. So I'm aware of an IT company that happens to be a client of BDO Central's, who quite early on in the lockdown period put an offer out to not only their existing clients but also potential new clients for those businesses that didn't have an online presence. They said that they could create an online presence for that business within 2 working days. One of our staff here took advantage of that. Her partner owns 2 local restaurants, one in Fielding here and one in Palmerston North. They didn't have an online presence prior to the lockdown. They were hurting quite badly with not having either of their restaurants open. They took advantage of this offer, got an online presence and started a delivery business, which is continuing even now in level 2 when they are able to open the restaurant. So taking the time to brainstorm all the opportunities to improve your business is very valuable and empowering exercise. So you need to leave no stone unturned here. So if you're sitting there thinking, how do I do that? Or even if you're thinking that might be quite difficult to do on my own, you don't have to do it on your own. Come and talk to us. It's as simple as sitting down and having a conversation and talking about what opportunities there might be. Okay, it's one thing to look at opportunities, but you can't ignore vulnerabilities and challenges. So you need to take time also to think about vulnerabilities. Try and identify what are the 5 biggest vulnerabilities in your business right now. And they could be things like poor cash flow, a sustained downturn in demand for your products or your services. It could be poor debtor management, and that's not uncommon now at all, or it could be your banking covenants not being met. It's important when you think about this area to think about the people who you deal with in your business, so your customers or your clients, and think about their businesses a little bit too. So you might be sitting there thinking, well, my business is okay, but if 3 or 4 of your biggest clients or customers happen to be struggling, then it's likely to have an impact on your business. And that could be in terms of reduced sales, or it could be in terms of them taking longer to pay you or not pay you at all should they ultimately fall over. So you need to work out what those vulnerabilities are. So naming the vulnerabilities enables you to put in place a plan to try and overcome them. Name so that you can tame is a great mindset to have. And you need to be brutally honest in your assessment of your vulnerabilities. Putting together a rosy plan for your bank is not going to pass muster in today's difficult times. So once you've identified the 5 biggest opportunities and your 5 vulnerabilities, you need to try and identify 2 or 3 critical challenges for your business. And that might include things like deciding whether or not to sell or liquidate part of the business, or, as I said before, establishing an online sales platform that you might not currently have, or it could be securing finance to trade through the next 3 to 4 to 5 months. We do recommend that you do a careful analysis of all the risks in your business. And by far the best way to do this is to complete a risk register, which assesses the likelihood of each risk and then the consequences for your business if that risk is not mitigated. So in the chart here, low consequence, moderate, high, and significant confidence across the top, and then how certain or likely are those things to happen down the side. Well, that will help you identify the areas that you need to concentrate on. So if it's almost certain to happen and has a significant risk right out the side here, that's probably the #1 priority. So risks fall into 10 categories. Governance risk includes poor planning, lack of up-to-date policy, poor discipline around working on the business. So you've had the ideal opportunity, really, 4 weeks to work on your business. Because if you haven't been able to work in your business, if you haven't been an essential business and you've been at home, I'd suggest that if you haven't done that, then you've wasted an opportunity. It's not too late, of course. The second one is leadership, and the risks around, and the risks are around communication, reporting, and quite importantly, team morale. Products and services, there are risks around lack of adaptation or innovation. Operational, the risks here include suppliers and supply chain, contracts, and key customers. Marketing risks include poor return on investment or overspending, and it could include a lack of digital presence. Sales risks may include the need to adapt to e-commerce or online selling, which is quite a common theme. Risks around poor training or overselling in the times that we live in. Finance risks include undercapitalization, so lack of sufficient cash flow, a poor financing structure, poor credit control, poor debtor management, poor reporting, and most importantly, probably lack of forecasting. Good opportunity, as I said earlier on, to bring in your banker, your bank manager. they can help with this whole process, this whole planning process. HR risks might include overspending or poorly managed restructuring and grievances. So, excuse me, I'll just have some water. Quite a lot around at the moment around HR, and you still need to be really careful with your HR. If you are thinking of reducing your staff numbers, there is still a process that you need to follow. So don't just assume that because we've been through this quite unusual time of all being locked away in our houses and with business not able to operate, that it's okay to ignore normal HR practice. It isn't. So again, here, this is an area where advice is required. The ninth risk is admin, and that some of the risks there might include lack of automation, and the 10th risk is technology. So that might include poor adaptation of software or apps. So once you've identified the risks, you need to pull everything together in a cohesive plan, which includes goals and actions, and most importantly, responsibilities. Your business recovery plan is going to be much more detailed than a business plan. In a business recovery plan, you need to get right down into the detail for each department in your business. Goals need to be SMART, and SMART goals are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So SMART goals, and all actions need to be assigned to someone to be responsible for them. The goals and actions need to be updated regularly through some form of regular review process. And this time we'd recommend a monthly review for at least 6 months, and then a change to quarterly after that. Remember, right at the start I said short-term planning is what is going to get you through right now. Then we want to pull everything together as a complete package. So depending on your circumstances, your package might include your personal budget, your risk register, your business recovery plan, a business forecast. It might include an organisation chart if you've got people working for you. And if you're going to be needing to apply for finance, it could include a finance application. Now, it might sound like a lot of work here, but the thing to note is that you're not necessarily going to have to do this all at the same time. For example, you might have sufficient cash flow, and that may have been provided by the wage subsidy, so that you don't need to apply for finance right now. Also, if you don't have people working from you, then you won't need an organisation chart. What is important is to establish what is right now for you and for your business, what combination of those things that you need, and more importantly, who will do them. So once it all gets put together, you end up with a plan, and it potentially could look something like this. So it's a plan. It's got a summary, and then some detail around personal spending, loans, annual spending, your revenue. We talked about the gross profit percentages, knowing what they are, looking at whether that can be increased, overheads, looking at whether there can be savings made, net profit, and then of course tax, your drawings, which comes out of your personal budget, and then factor in such things as asset purchases, sales, principal repayments on your loans. Your KPIs, so identifying the 5 critical KPIs down the left-hand side there. right-hand side, the opportunities, the key opportunities that you are going to focus on in your business. And of course, not forgetting your 5 vulnerabilities, and then coming up with, as we said, 2 to 3 of your critical challenges. That's what a business recovery plan looks like. And then this is part of the risk register review. Identifying the risks and working out some goals, some actions, who's going to do them, and when they're going to be done by. Having this gives you the ability to measure against it to see if you are achieving your goals. Okay, next steps. Quite frankly, doing nothing is not an option. I think it's the definition of insanity, isn't it? Doing the same thing and expecting a different result. You can't, in today's environment, doing nothing is just not an option. Put the oxygen mask on yourself first. The more sustainable you can make your business right now, the better for everyone. You need a plan. You need a plan to get through these challenging times. Focus on what you can do as opposed to worrying about what might happen in the future. And as I said also at the start, get help from us. Talk to us. Let's do this together. Together, you'll get a better outcome. So how do we do that? Several ways we can help you. We have a number of options here. So you could meet with us either online or in person if it's safe to do so. We can do that as one session of, typically it would be up to 4 hours. It could be broken into two-hour sessions. What we'll do before we meet is we'll send you some in-depth pre-work for you to complete so that you have the time to consider the impact that COVID-19 has had on each of the departments in your business. So we then take the completed pre-work that you send back to us prior to us meeting. We take that guide and we work through a plan and a set of goals for each department. So at the end of it, as the example that we showed previously, you end up with a detailed and well thought out plan to give your business the best chance of recovery. Secondly, we can do all of that, but we can add into it a finance application. So if the plan indicates that you need some additional finance, you need to approach your bank, then we can help with that process too. And typically that will involve some forecasting, budgets, and cash flows. Third option is a complimentary business recovery review. That's where we will send you a business recovery action list to complete, which is very much a condensed version of the plan. And this option really suits quite small businesses. So small businesses that don't actually require the comprehensive business recovery plan. Once you've completed all that work, of the action plan, we then schedule a 15-minute phone call to review your plan and talk about the next steps. There's a bit of a risk with that approach. Excuse me, that approach requires you to do most of the work, and the risk is, of course, that you may not get around to doing the work because you're most probably quite busy in your business. The fourth option is if you're unsure of the best way forward and you want to talk a little bit more about what we've talked about very briefly here today, we can schedule a complimentary meeting to discuss your goals, your current problems, and your challenges. And from there, we would work out the best way forward for your particular business. I'll just reiterate that if you are going to need to obtain some funding for your business, it's absolutely vital that you prepare a cash flow forecast. So the fundamental thing is that the loan needs to be repaid. So your business needs to generate enough profit, which then obviously converts to cash in order to make the repayment. So one of the things that we saw during the lockdown period is the business finance guarantee scheme that the government came up with didn't have a huge uptake from a lot of businesses. And one of the reasons behind that was fundamentally the loan still had to be repaid. So if the forecasting indicates that your business can't afford to repay a loan, then you're not going to get a loan. It's as simple as that. So talk to us. We're pretty sure that the benefits you will get from undertaking this process will be far greater than our fee. Most importantly, this is about helping you as quickly as possible and ensuring that we are working with you to build a stronger and more resilient business. Okay. That's the end of the presentation. So, Beck, do we have any questions?
Thank you, Ross. Yeah, we do have a couple of questions that have come through. So the first one for you, Ross. I love the idea of a business recovery plan, but I'm flat out with work right now. How can I free up some of my capacity to do this work?
Okay, yeah, I guess I sort of alluded to that. I guess when we think about what we're doing in our business, we think about it. It's probably best to think about it in terms of what we call an achiever matrix, and the achiever matrix has got 4 quadrants. So if you start with the not urgent and not important quadrant, which we could also call the quadrant of waste, then don't do those sorts of things. So really it's about undertaking some sort of analysis about, you know, why you don't think you've got capacity to do this, because, you know, this is really important. So I think that the answer is really have a look and see and try and work out why it is that you're so busy and see if you can eliminate things that are not important and not urgent.
Thanks, Ross.
Hopefully that answers that.
Yep. And one more question just around cost. I'm concerned I can't afford to do this work. What can you suggest for me?
Right, well, there are a number of options around that we do have a number of options available to us in terms of spreading cost. We can organise finance. We do that with our ordinary accounting fees. We have a finance option available, so that's certainly an option. There was an option available through the New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, that they sometimes have grants available. All of the money, we believe that all of the money that was made available by the government recently for that has now been used. But just keep on the lookout. We will keep on the lookout to see whether there are any opportunities in that area that might come up. The other option too might be if you are needing to approach a bank to obtain some additional finance, then potentially we could build the cost into some of that funding as well. So talk to us, I think, is the answer. There's probably options to cover that off.
Great, thanks, Ross. So we haven't got any other questions at this point, just those 2.
Okay, thank you. All right. Well, thank you everybody for making the time to attend our webinar. We do really appreciate that your time is very valuable right now. We hope that we've given you some ideas to think about and maybe some options for how we might be able to support you and your business. And I think the word that I used before about resilience is really important. So what we're trying to do for you is build a resilient business. So here's a little quote to end on. Nothing is so contagious as enthusiasm. Make a simple plan today. I think it'd be important to commit to at least 3 actions you will take as a result of being here today, just so that you can get something worthwhile out of today's session. Write those down. Give each of those actions an owner and a completion date. And the owner, in many cases, is you. We know that this is a worrying time for many businesses, but the point I'm making here today is that you don't need to undertake that worrying alone. There's a lot of support out there, and there will be more to come, and we are here. As the very first slide indicated, we are open for business. We are here to support you and to support your business. So thank you once again, everybody, for attending today.
Great, thank you everyone for attending and participating. And I'll end the webinar now. So thank you very much.